Hello there. In this video we're going to use the simple default bracelet that's available in Fluid Designer for 3D printing, and we're going to show you how you can add some sort of pattern to the surface of the bracelet. In this case we're going to add a Celtic knot pattern as shown. So if you start off Fluid Designer, first thing that we need to do is to go to the bracelets folder, and we're going to select the default bracelet, which is 65mm, all UK sizes 25 to 95mm, and you just drag and drop that onto the workspace. Now just switch on screencast key, so key presses should be displayed down here, and if I just hold down the center mouse button and just rock the mouse, you can see what the current state of the bracelet is. The default one is 1mm by 10, so it's 1mm thick there and 10mm deep. And if we wanted to change that, we could just click on here and you can see that'll change it to 15mm deep or back to 10mm deep. Now I'm going to stick with the 1mm by 10mm one. But what we should notice, if you look at this one, it's actually very flat on the inside and very flat on the outside of this bracelet. So what I want to do is I'm going to try and round it off on the outside but keep it relatively flat on the inside. Now how do we do that? Well, the bracelet itself is, if I actually delete this cross section 1 by 10, the bracelet itself is made up of this default inner diameter, which, as you've seen in the previous video, is something called a NURB circle. That's what this object is, and it's a curve. And wrapped around that curve is a cross section 1 by 10mm. Well, this object is also a curve. Now, where is this object? Well, over here in the outliner window, you can see at the moment our bracelet is 65mm bracelet is selected. If we go up to the very top here, you can see that there is another object on the workspace called cross section 1 by 10mm. Now, when we select that, you can't see anything. That's because it's hidden from view. So if I click on this little eye here and just scroll the center mouse button to zoom in, now if I try and select it at the moment, I can't, because this object is not selected, this icon here, the Viewport Selection. So when I switch that on, I can now select my object, my curve in fact. It's 1mm, so it's 1mm wide and 10mm long. So this restricts the view of it. This stops you from selecting it and moving it anywhere. So I want to actually be able to select it. Okay, so that's our 1mm by 10mm cross section, and this shape is actually wrapped around our bracelet. So our default bracelet, if I just scroll down using the mouse button, is 65mm. Well, I want to change from that size. So before you change size, what you should do is delete the cross section of it, switch off the selection of it, and switch off the view. I'm going to use a bracelet size of 55mm, so I select that object there, that curve, and I switch on the view and switch on the selection of it. Now, if we're going to wrap around this curve, the curve in the center there, what we need to do is to change the bevel object to 1 by 10. So as we do that, the curve that can be seen in the middle is wrapped around the bracelet, wrapped around the NURB circle to create our simple bracelet. Now, as I said already at the beginning, I want to change this from being very flat on the inside and the outside to having a curved appearance on the outside. So if I just scroll in and if I just select that object there, and if I go to view and view it from the top, So I want to edit this. Now we edit it by going into edit mode, and if I press the tab key on the keyboard, you'll see we switch to edit mode. Now this object is a curve and it has control points. Now if I select those 3 control points there by holding down the shift key and clicking on them, I can then adjust this. Now notice it's all adjusting, and that's because something called proportional editing. If you see there's a circle on the screen, and if I scroll the center mouse button, I can reduce the size of that circle. Now if the circle, wherever the circle overlaps, that object will be moved in addition to the 3 control points that I'm using. So when the circle is very small, notice only the left part moves. I'm scrolling the center mouse button here. Now the right part moves as well. Well, I don't want to move the right part of the object. I want to maintain that as more or less flat. I just want to move the left part. So I just want the circle there small. So I've moved those 3 control points. Now I just want to move this control point, and I don't want to move it quite that far. Well, at the moment it's jumping, and essentially it's jumping in 1mm amounts because something called the snap feature is on, which is this magnet up here on the toolbar. So if I switch the snap off, if I move it now, notice I can move it a smaller increments, and that's what I want to do. And I'll just scroll out the proportional editing as well. So I'm just going to adjust it to there. Now I like the snap on, so I'm going to switch the snap back on now. So we've adjusted the profile, the shape of this, and look at the effect that that's had on the bracelet. The bracelet is now flat on the inside, which is this side, and it's rounded on the outside, and that's the effect that I want. So I've modified this cross-section curve, this object, and it's had an effect on my finished bracelet. Now once I'm happy with the shape, I can press the tab key to come out of edit mode. Okay, so I've changed the profile of the bracelet. Now what I want to do is to add a pattern on the outside. Now the pattern that I'm going to add, if I click on Group Library, that just refreshes all my patterns. If I scroll down here, I'm going to use the parametric patterns, and there are lots and lots and lots of patterns here, and the one that I'm going to use, and I'm just scrolling down quickly, is the Celtic knot pattern. So I'm just looking for Celtic knot. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to use this pattern here, which is a Celtic knot pattern with 4 leaves. So that's the object I want, and it's in patterns parametric. Now if I drag and drop this onto the workspace, my bracelet will disappear and I'll just have the pattern. What I must do to use this pattern is to go to File and Append. And if we just go up through the menu system until we get the word Groups here, this is the Groups library. These are all the folders on my system with various patterns in them, and the patterns I want here are the parametric patterns. And the object that I'm going to use is a Celtic knot, and it's a 4-leaf pattern, and it's 002 is the one I want. And I need the object. So it's a Celtic knot pattern with 4 leaves, and I want to append the object from the library. Now when I do that, if I just scroll down this outline window again and go back to where my well, I'm actually using this object, aren't I, as my bracelet this time. The Celtic knot pattern is this one that I've just imported. Okay, so that's the pattern that I've got. Now at the moment that pattern's got a cross-section diameter of 1.0, which is a circular cross-section. Now I want to change that. I need to make it a bit thicker, so I'm going to make it cross-section 1 by I'll do 1 by 3, so you can see that that's the effect that I get. Now at the moment that is at the wrong angle compared with my bracelet. I want to wrap it around the outside of my bracelet, So what I need to do is to lift it up at the back. In other words, what I'm going to do is to rotate it about the x-axis. The red arrow is the x-axis. So if I just go to I over here, if I just click on this number here, you'll see that it rotates it about the x-axis. And if I drag the mouse, I can rotate it quickly. Or if I type in the number 90 degrees, that's what I need to do to this object. I need to rotate it 90 degrees so that it's square on with my bracelet. Now if I look there, you can see it's a little bit too big at the moment, my object. And if I actually go to view and view from the front, I think it is, yeah, you can see that my Celtic knot is a little bit wider than my bracelet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my Celtic knot a little bit smaller, and I do that by pressing S on the keyboard. S is for scale. And if I just move the mouse and move it in slowly, you can see it disappears. I don't want to go too far. I just want to, so I've clicked the left mouse button there to accept that. I just want it slightly smaller than my bracelet. Now whenever you do scale something in Fluid Designer, you must always apply the scale to curves. So I do that by doing Control and A on the keyboard and apply the scale. And notice it just thickens up slightly when I do that. So that's quite an important thing to do. Now, I want more than one copy of this pattern. So with the pattern selected, what I'm going to do is to use something called a modifier. And the kind of modifier I'm going to use is the first one here called an array modifier. And you can see what happens. I get an additional copy of the Celtic knot, and I have actually got a count of 2 of them, or I could have 3 or 4. And there's also something here called the offset. Now the offset at the moment is 1. If I actually reduce the size of that, and I'm just clicking on the left here, you'll see the pattern overlaps, and so I can modify my pattern by modifying the overlap. You do actually, when you're creating a bracelet like this, you can actually have a value above 1, which will give you gaps between the Celtic knots. A gap below 1 means that the Celtic knots will overlap. So I'm going to have a count of 4 and an offset of 7. Now I need to wrap this Celtic knot around my bracelet. Well, remember that my bracelet object is inner diameter 55 millimeters. So what I do there is I use another modifier, and it's called a curve modifier. I'm going to curve this Celtic knot using a curve modifier. I'm going to curve it around the object inner diameter 55. So I'm having to scroll down this list, scroll down through all the cross sections which are available, and I want this object, inner diameter 55 millimeters. Now you can see when I do that, it's not quite right. My Celtic knot is on the inside of my bracelet, and so I need to adjust it slightly. I need to move it out. Well, we can do that by going to view and view it from the top, and if I also now press the tab key on the keyboard, you'll see that my Celtic knot goes into the middle of the screen there. Now essentially what I want to do is I want to move this upwards, and if I just move it up, yeah, I've gone above the red line there. Let me just put it above the red line, the x-axis, and if I press the tab key again, yeah, that's not looking too bad. So you can see that my Celtic knot, it's actually probably sticking out a little bit too much. So if I go to view and top view again and press the tab key, if I just move it back down, now remember the thickness of this is 3 millimeters in total. So if I press the tab key to come out of edit mode, now that's actually sticking out on the inside now. So let's go to view and top view. Now what I really want to do is to line this up with the x-axis, and if I switch off the snap, you can see if I scroll in I can control this better, and if I just line it up the bottom of it with the x-axis there. Switch my snap back on. I like having the snap on, and press tab key. Now that's looking better. I haven't got it sticking through the bottom because essentially it's lined up with the middle of the bracelet, and that's where the red axis is effectively. And there it is. It curves around my bracelet now. So there's my my two objects. There's my bracelet with a Celtic knot wrapped around it. Now to finish this off, what I need to do is to change the, well, I need to join the two together, but before I join the two together I must change them to meshes, and I must do the Celtic knot first. If I change the bracelet first, my Celtic knot won't be able to wrap around it anymore. So we need to change the Celtic knot to a mesh first of all, and we do that by going to Tools, Object Tools, and Convert to a Mesh. And when I do that, notice all this lot over here in the Properties window disappears. So we won't be able to change that anymore. Yeah, so you must make sure the position of it's right. Now if I select my bracelet, and if I convert that to a mesh, okay. Now, one other thing that you could do here is to improve the quality of the bracelet. If we press the tab key, and if we zoom in there, and if we press the A key on the keyboard to select all of it, and if I click the right mouse button and subdivide, you'll see that I increase the amount of meshes on this object. And if I press the W key on the keyboard, I could have also done subdivide from there. But what I want to do now is I want to smooth this off. So if I click smooth and W and smooth and W and smooth, that just makes the surface appearance of my bracelet a little bit smoother and a little bit finer detail than it would have been otherwise. So subdivide and smooth. Now what we want to do is to join these two objects together. So if I click on the Celtic knot there, and if I hold down the Shift key and click on the bracelet and go to Tools, Object Tools, and join them together, I now should have my bracelet and my Celtic knot as one object. So there in effect is my finished object. If I just go to View and switch off the grid lines, you can just see it a little bit better. Okay. Now in Fluid Designer we never go to File and Save. We always go to File and Export, because we can't actually print Fluid Designer default files, Blender files. What we can print are wavefront OBJ files. So if you go to File and Export and Wavefront, and I like to save them to the desktop, and we can call this a 55mm bracelet with a Celtic knot for leaf pattern. And so we save that file, save it as an OBJ file, which is a printable file format. And what we must do though is send that object to another application called Netfab Basic, and run it through Netfab Basic and just check that it's all okay and make it fully 3D printable. Okay, so that's our basic plain bracelet, but in this case we've added a Celtic knot pattern. Thank you.